Did we do it? Yes! Credits, baby, let's go! Alright. Let's talk about the ups and downs of Castlevania Legends, shall we? So, just to give you just a snippet of backstory, I played through from Castlevania 1 all the way through Symphony of the Night, played through all the Castlevania games up to Symphony of the Night back in 2020, all in one fell swoop. And loved them, you know, loved some more than others, including the Game Boy games, Castlevania Adventure and Castlevania Adventure 2. And I'm turning this down a little bit. And yeah, the Game Boy games were like just kind of watered down basic versions of the NES titles, but that's okay. That's what I expect from Game Boy games. And so, yeah, they're not as good. I don't enjoy them as much, but they're still fun. And so this game came out the same year as Symphony of the Night, apparently, just later that same year. And it's a later original Game Boy game. So I actually didn't even know this existed until recently, until a few days ago when I decided to put these back on the list. And so having been gone so long from the Castlevania franchise, for over 4 years it's been since I played a Castlevania game, and now I'm picking the series back up, and I'm planning to play all the 3D ones. I'm going to play them all in order. This one was fun. It was fun to play Castlevania again, and it feels like a Castlevania game. The way they use your whip, the kind of janky platforming, and the crappy characters that won't get off of your sprites, like in the older Castlevania games, I remember having a lot of trouble with Medusa heads. In this game, it's mostly bats. Just bats everywhere. And so, there's some frustration that comes along with that, but it comes part and parcel with the Castlevania series. And it's fun. It's still fun throughout all that. And this game had the foundation of a good Castlevania game. It had some interesting levels where it wasn't necessarily like you could backtrack a little bit, and like it wasn't totally linear. You could go off the beaten path and find extra items or healing, things like that. I liked that. I liked the level design. The boss fights, I think, were B+ tier. They weren't amazing, but they were designed in a way where if I could tell that if you mastered the fight, which of course I never did in any of the fights, and I barely scraped through in all of them. But if I was playing this game over and over again and I was like speedrunning it or something, or I just wanted to like do a no hit run or something, it feels like you could do this in this game. The jankiest of games, like the Ninja Gaidens of the world, it's a lot harder to say that because there's so much jank involved that there's more variables, there's more of a luck factor. This game, and especially with the bosses, it felt like I could see the moveset, and I could tell that if I got better at the moveset, I could probably... It seemed possible that you could master those boss fights. And I like that, especially in these 2D platformer boss fights. That feeling that you can notice, that you can recognize the pattern, and you can see where there are places that you can stand or jump to or duck to or whatever, that you can avoid damage, as long as you know the pattern well enough. I never did that again, but I could tell that it seemed like it was possible. And I like that in a boss fight. I don't like the ones like, again, a lot of the Ninja Gaiden games and some of the Castlevania bosses too. Like sometimes it's just like you get in there and you just try and make sure you damage them enough before they damage you enough to kill you. It's chaos. And I don't like those fights as much because, again, more of a luck element, more jank. I didn't see a ton of that in the boss fights, and I like that. Now, that being said, there is some jank to this game. All of the Game Boy titles have some jank for a couple of reasons. The platforming is imprecise. You'll hit a ledge or you'll jump on a ledge and you definitely should have made that jump and you don't, or vice versa. You look like you're not going to make it and then you like hit the ledge and you're like not even, your feet aren't even touching it, but you're still on it somehow. There's some of that. There's the controls. I found this to be true of every Game Boy game. Every Game Boy game on the Nintendo Switch service, anyway. I don't remember. It's been so long since I played a real Game Boy game on a Game Boy. I couldn't say. But on every Switch Online Game Boy game, the controls, the inputs are extremely finicky. So if, for instance, in a game like this where you have you have to push up and B to do an ability. If you want to do that ability, you got to kind of stand still for a second, and then you're looking at up and you're looking at B and you hit them. Because if you hit them and they're not exactly at the same time, or if you're moving while you try and hit them or something, it's not going to read it. You got to hit it, be exact. So like when I want to use ability, it'd be like, okay, everybody shut up for a second, everyone stand still, up and B. All right, I used it. Now we can move on. And on the other side of that coin, I would often activate those abilities on accident when I didn't really hit up and B. I hit B and then I hit up, or I hit up and then I jumped, and then I hit up because I'm climbing a rope or something, and then I hit B. But then it thought I did it at the same time. It's a lot of that. And maybe some of that is user error. But as someone that has played a lot of 2D platformers later, I can tell you that some games I don't have that problem, and some I do. So it's definitely, and it seems to be inordinately true with Game Boy, Switch Online Game Boy games. So probably my guess is that the original Game Boy was like that too, and honestly, I just don't remember. It's been 30 years, So that's always an issue. The only other thing I'll say is that like I said before, this is kind of a watered down basic version of a Castlevania game, and that's okay. The only example I can think of a Game Boy game the series that really pushes the envelope and actually does more than just watered down basic versions of the games, at least so far for the games I've played, is Kirby. Kirby doesn't do that. They don't just make watered down basic versions. Like Dreamland 2 was an improvement on Kirby's Adventure that was on the NES. They don't just like, hey, let's just make a basic ass version of Kirby's Adventure. Maybe that's because Kirby started on the Game Boy with Dreamland. I don't know, but the Kirby's the only exception to that I've ever known. All the other ones, Castlevanias, and this is true for Game Gear too, Sonic, Mario, like Super Mario Land, they're just like more basic, watered down, acceptable versions, acceptable handheld versions of the game, and that's what this is too. And that's okay. It's just I didn't see a lot of innovation, and that's okay. As far as what is different about this, I don't know the lore, but having a female protagonist, Sonia Belmont, I don't know who the hell that is, but that was interesting. It didn't really change the gameplay at all, but it was from a story and lore perspective, I thought it was interesting. The only other thing I'll say is that there's a system in this game where you have soul weapons instead of sub weapons, and you don't get them from drops in the middle of the levels. You get them from bosses. And once I had to Google it. I had the user manual up. The user manual is crap. It doesn't tell you how to do really much of anything. But I had to Google how to switch my soul weapon because it looked like you just couldn't do it. And the user manual does not tell you how to do it. And I did eventually find out how to do that, but the fact that I had to go somewhere else on the internet to figure that out, that was a little disappointing. And the way that system works is, it's okay. It's just like, like when you pick up an axe in Castlevania, you think, oh, cool, I have the axe. I can use it as my sub-weapon. Or you pick up the cross or whatever. Well, in this game has those too, but they're not actually weapons. They're just collectibles. And apparently, I had to look this up because I couldn't understand. I picked up an axe and I was like, why can't I use this axe? The collectibles are only to secure some different ending. Like you can get a different ending if you get all of the collectibles or something. And that's all well and good to have collectibles in a Game Boy game, because actually this early, that's kind of novel actually, but it wasn't explained very well at all, and it didn't address it in the user manual. So I thought that was pretty confusing and objectively a dicey decision. But all that being said, I still did enjoy it. When I think about where I'm going to rank a game like this, it's not going to rank super high, honestly, because I'm just going to enjoy, with the exception of Mario. Mario is the gold standard, in my opinion. These older games, especially on the Game Boy, but also any Sonic game, any of the older Sonic games, any of these older Kirby games and Castlevania, although I enjoy them, I am a little bit of a baby for the more polished 2D games of, the current era. And because I have played so many of those now, going back to these older ones that are much shorter, much simpler, much jankier, much more basic, objectively, well, let's keep objectivity out of it. I just don't enjoy them as much. And so these don't tend to rank that high. But that doesn't mean I think they're objectively bad or they're historically unimportant or anything like that. I just don't enjoy them as much. So this game's not going to rank high. It's going to rank fairly low because I just, this genre and this era just doesn't do it for me like some other eras and some other genres. But I did have fun with it, and I'm glad that I played it, and I'm glad that I got a little sliver of Castlevania gaming history that I didn't know about before. I didn't know this game existed until just a few days ago, so I am glad that I got to play it. All right, last couple orders of business. The bottom center of the screen says that we've beaten 81 games in 2024 and 528 since we started doing this in 2020. Those numbers need to be updated now. We've now beaten 82 games in 2024 and 529 since we started doing this. Let's go. All right, cool. And then this would be the portion of the video where I would normally say, Castlevania Legends, it's been fun, but we are now going to delete you from our console and never play you again. But since we're playing this on Switch Online on the Game Boy, there's no deleting that needs to be done. So we will just say, Castlevania on the Game Boy, it's been fun. Thank you for existing. I'm glad I got to play you. Adieu.